We are going to continue our cake journey, and our next destination is going to be holiday and themed cakes. Our first stop along the way is going to be our 4th of July cake or Independence Day cake. What we've got here is we've got a cake that has 13 stripes, 50 stars. What I've done with the drape is I went in and I used a texture mat and I gave it a texture, or I gave it a design in there. And then with my stripes, I went in with my little seam and I seamed the stripes on the bottom of the cake. Then I went in and we're going to use a 2-plate system here. So this is probably going to be the easiest way to start stacking your cakes. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to put it all together and we're going to kind of reduplicate that cake. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. First thing you need to do is decide, how big do I want my cake? Sometimes that can be the hardest thing. How many people am I going to feed? And how much fondant do I want to have to roll out for this cake? So the first thing you need to do is, ta-da! What I did here is I covered my cake in fondant. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just take icing and ice your cake because we're going to be covering it with a drape anyway. But I thought I would like to have the bottom of the cake the same color as my drape, just in case my drape didn't cover all the way. Also, I took my cake and I glued it to my cake board with piping gel. You can also glue it together with icing. If you're not sure how to cover the cake in fondant or you want to review, please go back to the video, the lessons on the journey where we learned how to cover the cake. Got my cake here. Also, the cake board, you can determine if you want a larger board or a smaller board, depending upon how large you want your drape to be. I went with a 10-inch cake, and I went with a square one because I like the way that it flows with the stripes on the cake. Put my cake on my cake board, glued it down so that when I put on my drape, that it doesn't start moving around. One thing you need to do is, gosh, how big of a drape, how long do I want my drape to be? What I've done here is I took a piece of paper and I made kind of like a pattern, if you will, on how large I want my drape to be. Now keep in mind with the fondant, it's going to be a little bit heavier than my paper, so it is going to drape a little bit more. And this I came up with, I wanted 17 inches. So if you're going with a larger cake, keep in mind, you might have to go with a larger template, and then that's more fondant that you have to do. I rolled out my fondant. Ta-da! Now I have my fondant ready. Now I want to go ahead and texture the white part first before I start putting on the embellishments with the stripes. Again, just like fondant, when you're not using it, you want to make sure that it's covered so it doesn't dry out. So that's why I had my piece of saran wrap. If it feels a little dry, you may want to come back in with a little bit of shortening on your hands. And I am going to go ahead only because I'm not going to work as fast as I normally do because I want you guys to see exactly what I'm doing here. Then you decide what kind of texture do you want. And there's so many different kinds of texture mats out there. It is completely up to you. This is kind of a basket weave. And we're just going to do this all the way across. As long as you don't stress the fondant underneath it, you should be okay. This way. So now we kind of have a little bit of a texturization there. Just gives it that little bit added personal touch to it versus just plain fondant. Okay? So there we are there. Now next we want to do, I'm just going to move this over here. We want to go ahead and cut out our stripes. Ta-da! Right here, I got my stripes. What I've done is I use this little extending pizza wheel cutter, or you can do it one at a time. I took this and I divided it by 13 to find out what the width of my stripes are going to need to be. So based upon that, and you have to do a little bit of math and a little bit of figuring, and if you notice on my paper right here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but even if you use a plain paper, I have different marks here to try to figure out exactly where I wanted it so that it could be pretty much spaced the same. Then I rolled out my fondant. You need to make sure it needs to be at least 17 because this was 17. I'm going to take this. I'm just going to cover it over that for now, just so it doesn't dry out. Now I have my lines here, my stripes. Then what I have is called a stitching tool. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure your fondant is nice, because if it's not, it's going to start to dry and crack. And sometimes you can't help that, especially if you're underneath an air conditioner vent or something. So you just want to try to prevent it as much as you can. Now, if you're concerned about keeping your stitches straight, you can use a ruler as a straight edge and go up and down. But what I'm going to do is, like in real life when I stitch, it's not so pretty. We're just going to take this, and you don't want to press real hard, but you do want to press hard enough to get, again, another impression. And this is just going to add that little extra, wow, your cakes are so detailed. And this makes the difference between a beginner cake and a cake that's it brings out the best of you, and it just makes it look so professional. Okay, so now we have all of our stitches. How to apply our strips. What we're going to do with that is I've got some gum glue, and this is pre-made gum glue. But also, again, you can make your own gum glue, and in previous lessons in our fondant series, we do go over how to make that. We have that, and then we need our paintbrush. We're going to pick up our first stripe. And don't be afraid if they stretch a little bit, because we are going to go back and we're just going to trim them. So we're going to flip this guy over. We're going to paint him. And probably could use a fatter paintbrush too, just so that you can get it done. And one of the things with this red fondant, like I say, once you lay it down, if you pick it up, it might bleed. So kind of get it as close to straight as you possibly can. And one of the nice things about the American flag is the red starts and the red stops. So you can use this as your straight edge for the rest of your stripes. So we're going to just put this down, and you can see how much it's stretched. And so that rip's not even going to know. And if we need to, we can come back and trim this edge. To get your line straight, you can do this. You can do, and this does it 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4. Then there's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we have a white, so we're going to miss the white. We're going to go to the next one. Just going to kind of even this out a little bit. And if you're not sure on your lines, you can actually mark it on top also, and then you'll have a straight line to follow. Then, if you're wanting to do it this way, what I do is I'll pick it up like this and support it, because I don't want to re-roll it back up because I already have my glue on there. And then we'll pick it up and put it on here. And if we have to, we can straighten it out. Then we're going to come in here and we're just going to trim our edges. And on this cake, if your fondant cracks a little bit, that's okay because it kind of gives it that old fabric look to it. So some cakes, just like if you're wanting to do a marble cake or something, if you have your fondant a little dry and don't roll it out so smooth, you'll actually get a better look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There we are. Put this over here so I don't spill it. Now we're going to put it on our cake. You can do one of two things. If it's small enough, you'll probably be able to just pick this up and place it over that, but I'm too scared to do that. So you can either use your rolling pin, but because this is actually kind of a larger piece, what I've got here is a big piece of plastic. And I'm just going to roll it up on that, and then I'm going to let it come down. But before I do that, I don't want my fondant to stick, so I need to go ahead. And with my dusting puff, remember 50% powdered sugar, 50% cornstarch. I'm just going to kind of rub it on here. You can kind of see my handprints. Just so it doesn't stick. And then if you want, you can kind of just lightly do this. And then once it's on your cake, you can go back and you can always dust it off. I'll take this. And if you ever did it like a jelly roll, it's kind of the same thing here. We're just going to put it on here and we're just going to pull it off. And we're going to hope that this works. And this is where it's nice to have a couple people. We're going to take it here. We're just going to take it. La la! And then if you need to, like I say, once it's dry a little bit and it's a little bit more in place, you can come back and you can kind of brush it off. You can see how easy it'll brush off with a nice big brush. If you're used to using makeup brushes, you can come in with like a blush brush and you can go ahead and brush that off. Now we're going to do the 2-plate system. How to do that is, the thing with the 2-plate system is obviously you need 2 plates. Plates come in different sizes. One of the things you need to do when you're doing the 2-plate system is make sure your 2 plates are the same size. Because if they're not, when you go to put these on here, and if it's a larger plate, these are not going to line up. These here, that's what you do. So we have our 13 stripes. And we'll just kind of brush this away. And then we're going to have 50 stars. So instead of you seeing me punch out stars and sticking them on the cake, I did the majority of them now, and I took a star cutter, and you can take any size star cutter you want. I just kind of looked for one that was kind of the same size as that I thought would complement my cake. So I rolled out my white fondant, I cut out my stars. Now I'm going to take my glue, pick up my stars, and again, when you cut them out, if they have a little bit of a ragged edge, you can just kind of go in. Whoop, that's a falling star. You can kind of come in here and you can press these, kind of get it straight. Here you don't need a lot of glue, just a little bit of glue. And then we're just going to we're going to stick it on our cake. Now, when you first cut these out, some of these are pretty dry, but they're not too dry yet. If you need it to continue to flow so it does look like fabric, like you can see here where some of these are cut and some of them go around, that's so that they look. And if you do this while they're still, if they're not dry yet, I'll do one down here so you can see. You can actually take, even though this guy's a little close, but if you needed to, you can see how you can bend him around the corner. That way there, it looks like it's a piece of fabric that's laid over the cake. If you wanted to, you could even take this, and if you didn't want really tall pillars, you could actually have it drape on top also, but I kind of like the fitted look on top with this. So then you just keep going around. Again, tiny bit of glue. And you just stick them on. Kind of come in here and make sure your stars. And then if you have one on the bottom that you need, you can take this. Well, one really won't fit, but if you needed to, let's say that this guy was coming down here, I will take it. Then I'm gonna pick up my cake. I'm gonna use this to leverage it up so that I can come underneath it. Put my cake on here. And then how that star is hanging right there, you can come in with your knife and you can just kind of cut that off so that it looks like it's wrapped up underneath there. You've got here. And then if you're wanting to add just a little bit of embellishments, like take this and put it here. And then you come in with your brush, your nice soft brush, and you'll just brush these off. And then you're going to have your 4th of July cake with the two plate system. Hope you enjoyed the destination stop on this one. The next journey we're going to do is going to be a Halloween themed cake, and can't wait to see you for our next stop on our journey. Thank you for watching.